All right, and hello, welcome back to the SuperCoach Hub Big Bash podcast. I'm your host Nathan from Guns, and with me today is admin on the SuperCoach Tragics. It's Glen Fisher, aka Tiger for Life. Glen, how are you going?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Just keen to wrap up a round that has been and look forward to
Yeah,
a
yeah.
round that starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. So very short turnaround. So we better get
It
straight
is.
into it.
Yep.
Before I do, we'll have a look at some of the Supercoach Hub Big Bash community results. So in terms of overall rankings after this round, we've got Pelicans ran by Zane, who's in 127th. Also at 127th, we've got Vortex run by Jason. We've got 180 and 187th, we've got the runs ran by Jason, and in 263rd, who scored a whopping 1350 last round, slogged a maiden by Darren. Not only that, we have 24 people in the Supercoach Hub in the top 1,000 right now, and the top score from the Supercoach Hub players for the round was a massive 1486 by by the Pelicans, who are run by Zane. So
Oh,
some
yeah.
pretty big scores there, and hopefully we see our names on there soon enough.
Yeah, yeah. Moving my way up.
That's the stuff. All right, we'll get into the start of round two. Now we had the Strikers taking on the Sydney Thunder. The Sydney Thunder in the first innings posted a pretty good score, 7 for 200. Cameron Bancroft really he scored 74, anchored their innings, and they had contributions around him. Um, Tell me, we've got a Thunder double coming up in round four. Do you think you'll own Cameron Bancroft?
Yeah, well, he's definitely in my sights. I mean, he looked hard to dislodge, and he's always been a good player. His price is a little off-putting and a low break-even. I mean, if you're going to get him, you really need to jump now, right?
Yeah, you'd say this. You'd say so because we're talking I mean, sure, a batter can fail in any given game, but a 21 break even, you'd back him to pass that, and he could be well north of 170, 180 going into the double. So, yeah, you might need to act
Yeah.
quickly, as you say. Um, Also interested in uh, Nathan McAndrew. He just seems to find a way to score points regularly, even if he's not playing all that well. So he went and scored 59 last round. His ownership's going to be really low.
Yeah.
Do you think, if you were trying to advocate for a pod from this City Thunder team, you might look to McAndrew?
Yeah, I mean, I personally won't be touching McAndrew, but I do like that as a pod move. McAndrew is consistent, believe it or not. He's not one of the big names. So you're right, he'd be a pod. And if you're looking for a pod to move on up, I definitely like it. Just back on Bancroft, too, I say I'm always reluctant to spend anything over 150 on just bat, even in a double. I'm more inclined to go for a bowler or a all rounder.
Yeah.
But I do like McAndrew, mate. I think he's a sneaky little pod.
Yeah, and I think another thing to consider is we've got on Bancroft. Another thing to consider is we've got Jason Sanger coming back into this team. It could mean
Yep,
that Jilts gets dropped, so we might end up seeing
yep.
Bancroft take the gloves. Like that would. I'm not saying it makes him all of a sudden a must buy, but I'm saying it probably takes the burden of paying 170 for him with the extra fielding points that come with it. Um,
Yeah, I
I,
agree. It'd
I'm,
solidify
yeah,
MC more.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, Ollie Davies, I think, will be a very popular trade in from the Thunder ahead of
Yeah,
round four, just because he's had two pretty decent scores. He's yet to really go on with an innings. He could do that either this round or in that double.
yeah. I like the way Ollie Davies plays. You know, much like James Frigator Girk or however you say his name, they both go after it, and I like players that go after the ball.
Yeah, and they tend to be, although volatile for Supercoach, they do have high ceilings, and it's high
Yeah,
ceilings we're chasing in Big Bash. I'll move over to the strikers now. Not many of their bowlers did all that well, but Jamie Overton, he put up quite the round in the end, something along the lines of 195 points. He
yeah.
went
I'm a little bit
nuts.
annoyed with that one. I actually had Hardy and Overton in my side, and then I decided to go Basley and then keep Richo over Hardy, which is very painful. I mean, I did keep Walters, but I didn't think Overton would bowl 4 overs, and I'm not sure many of us did. Did you think he'd bowl four
No,
overs?
not at all. I
Yeah,
thought Basley would bowl 4 and he'd bowl 2.
yeah, and it's annoying because that's who I went. I had the coin to go up, and if I had have kept it the way it was with Hardy, I had to go. I mean, I just could have kept Hardy and Overton, but it is what it is. I still scored well enough.
Yeah, look, we know now, I guess, is the only hindsight. Like, we know now, so we can pick him after he's off the bye if we feel like it.
Yeah.
Matthew Short picked up from where he left off. I mean, far out, 270. I assume everyone that owned him captained him, but gee, it was he was really good this round, and his role is just as good as what it was last year.
It actually surprises me. So there was a world where I looked at fading Matt Short, but it was based on how the team was named. Once I saw the way the team was named, I thought, yeah, he could bowl in that. So yeah, I captained him Short, or vice captain took the loop, as we do. He's bowling pies, but still continues to bowl himself anyway. And he picked up a nice wicket in the first round, but just with the bat, he just looks so like, again, JFM, he just goes after it, and hard to dislodge, isn't he? He looks
Yeah,
incredible, actually.
he's really pushing his case for that Aussie T20 squad, and I think we'll see a few of these young guns from domestic cricket try and push their case to get even if it's a travelling reserve or a very low bench spot in the Australian squad later this year. It could be a lot of
Yeah.
motivation for them in this Big Bash series. Darcy Short, well, he returned. He returned to his former self in the first game. Then he returned back to how he played recently in Hobart in the second game. But, he made 94 points, made around 15K, pretty low break even once he's off the bye. Tell me, do you think you'll hold Darcy Short if you do own, that is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Darcy Short at Adelaide is definitely where I'll look to be playing him. He won't be playing in my main. He'll be an off the bench player. So somebody that's being volatile, just bat. Yeah, will play off my bench. But I am holding him. Both the
Yeah,
shorts I've held.
yeah. I'm thinking a similar thing as well. We'll move to the next game, Hurricanes Scorchers. I was a bit surprised that the Hurricanes named Nikhil Chowdhury. Like, I thought he would be enough for the whole season, but he's ended up playing in the second round. But he did really well, 57 points. I reckon he'll keep his spot. Tell me, do you think if you were a Chowdhury owner and you were using him as enough, are you going to move him on to another enough, or are you just going to try and get some cash out of him whilst he's still in the Hurricanes lineup?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's another one perfect to play off the bench, and the fact that his bat bowl makes him very handy to rotate around. So he's one of those players you can stick on your bench. They play a lot of late games, Thunder. So, Hobart, which is good. So I was just looking there. They play in the second. So he's actually a perfect loop option for playing off the bench. I'd be holding him because you can move him to bat to bowl, which means that you can play someone in game one, which is Thunder this round, and then move someone up, move him in for someone if they don't do what you need them to do. So yes, I would be holding.
Yeah, fair enough. And he looked a more than handy cricketer. I didn't the way he batted. I think he scored something like 40 off 30. I think there's quite a bit of potential there. I reckon they'll keep him in their side most of the season, even if it is in a bit part sort of role. He could chip his way up to 80, 90K, and you can sell him on for a 50K profit. Of course, we shouldn't forget to talk about Chris Jordan, who got 59 off 20 after striking at 50 last game. He batted at number 7. They move him down one spot, and he strikes at 295. Chris Jordan, it's a curious case with him because he doesn't really perform in the Big Bash, but he seems to have games every now and again where he just dominates the rest of the team, rest of the players on the field.
Those sort of stand and deliver players can do that. Like Walters did the same sort of thing. They're not your average batsman, but when they do stand and deliver, especially the pace, they really can go after it. And at Hobart, which is a nice batting deck, Optus, sorry, which is a nice batting deck. He looked good.
Yeah, he did look good, and
Yeah,
he took apart Andrew Ty, he took apart Jai Richardson, the
yeah, he
two of the
did.
three best bowlers in the Big Bash. So, hey, who am I to judge? But that makes him priced at 126,000. Got a pretty negative break even, so if you were to hop on, you'd probably need to do it now. But with no doubles anywhere in sight, I think you let that one go through to the keeper.
Yeah, don't be touching that one.
Yeah, I'm going to touch a nerve here, but Aaron Hardy, he got 130, 85 not out. Didn't bowl though, which is interesting. Do you think you'll hold him over the Scorchers double buy, or will you look to hold someone a bit cheaper?
Well, I actually held Hardy for this round, right? Then when Morris was named, I ended up reversing the trade and keeping Richo. And I thought, I got the right call. He didn't bowl, which is how I saw it playing out. But he came out with the bat and was incredible. And so that one bit me in the backside. But yeah, look, uh, team specific, I think people are struggling with who to sell this week. And with two buys coming up, Hardy could be that perfect guy to move on now.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you looking at if you were looking from the perspective of holding him over the double, like he's 190,000, has a 12 break even. You could be selling. You could have him at north of 200k next round. You're better off just
Yeah,
cashing out of that
yeah.
and investing that into some Thunder players ahead of round 4, and whilst cleaning up your side if you have any dead weight there. Um,
Absolutely. He'd be a perfect trade to someone like Bancroft or Hales. With Hales, you get some change and you could invest that money somewhere else into your side.
yeah, it's exactly right. Um, and Jai Richardson, he was unlucky. He could have had Chris Jordan out 3 or 4 times. I only got 21 in the end, but I mean, his break even is enormous this week at 145. But with the way the Hurricanes' top order's been batting, I won't be surprised if he goes close.
Yeah, well, I'm actually holding him only because I feel like he's going to be a pod. I know he's losing money, but with only 9 rounds, I'm not playing as much emphasis on the cash this year. I don't feel like it's as necessary as people think it is. So I'm actually holding Richo. He has been unlucky, but he is one of the best bowlers in the game. And I feel it's only one of those games I want to be on him when he gets it, has those 3 for 4 for.
Yeah, because he's playing at Optus. He's playing um, like an evening game in Optus as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's not it's not an afternoon game where it's pretty hot. It's an evening game. It's a bit cooler. At Perth, like everything's set up for him to go out and score 110 or something in that final game of the round. Just quickly, Zach Crawley. Now he went out. He opened the innings and he finished out, not out. Do you think coming off that double bye in say, what did that be, round 6, you might
Yeah.
have a look at Crawley because he's pretty affordable and he's a pretty high quality bat.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who bats 1, 2, 3 is always going to be in my sight, and especially someone like that goes after the ball. The reason I never touched him was job security, and I thought for certain that he wouldn't keep his job. And there's a couple of them in that side that I was a bit worried. But yeah, absolutely, I'll be going after Zach Crawley.
Yeah. We'll move to game 3 now. That's the Renegades and the Heat. The obvious standout in this one was Paul Walter with 152. He reminds me a fair bit of Dan Christian in the sense that, he's the level-headed guy in their middle order. He's a hitter, and he's got a bit about him in the middle overs with some slow balls and some cutters into the wicket. Now he's not too out of reach. You've just missed the big score. That's the only thing you'd be concerned with. But he's on a buy and he's 155,000. Would you, if you were a non-owner, would you prioritize him over, say, a Thunder player in round 4?
I don't hate it. So one of the things that people don't understand, like say you're just picking a just bat from Thunder, right? They're going to bat twice, whereas Walter will play one game, but he'll bat and he'll bowl, which is almost like an equivalency of playing twice, if that kind of makes sense. So I don't hate that mindset. I'm always for the all-rounders in BBL. As many BBL all-rounders I can have in my batting position, I like to have, and Walter will be one of them.
Yeah, and I think that he could be actually quite a necessity in the latter parts of this tournament. Just looking at him, they're going to bowl him out more often than not. He's a more than handy bowler. They don't like to bowl Bartlett 4 overs. They don't like to. They're managing their quicks as well. Kuhneman won't always get 4, nor Swepson. Walter
Yeah,
genuinely could actually bowl 4 all the time. So yeah, I agree. I think you're going to have to
right.
bring him in, and if it has
Yeah.
to be at the expense of a Thunder player, I think so be it.
He has a chink in his armour, Walter, to the slower ball. If you noticed him, he really struggles with the slower ball. That's what happens with a lot of those stand and deliver players. It just goes straight after the ball. But yeah, I really like Walter. I think anyone who bats, bowls, and he fields in pretty good positions as well. Are pretty handy to have.
Yeah, I agree. Jake Fraser McGurk. Now, he was batting on a completely different wicket to the rest of the
Yeah,
players that night. He's in sensational form. Maxi called him the most exciting batter in the country. For that bare minority that don't own him, actually, it's not a bare minority. For the just some quick maths here, 64% of the teams that don't own him, he's only 98k. Should he be the number one target to trade in this week if you don't own?
absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of player you want for SuperCoach. He gets to 20 points, he's getting a strike rate. He goes after the ball. I mean, what do you think? He 6 sixes in that game from
Yeah,
memory?
6 sixes and a boundary.
And a boundary like that. That's the kind of player that you want in Supercoach. He's the kind of player that gets you quick runs, and he's a perfect off the bench player for when you're not playing him in the double, because that's the kind of player that can. It's volatile, right? He could get out really cheap, but he could get you a quick 50, quick 60 in a very short time. Scary
Oh
not to
yeah,
own.
for sure. Yeah, definitely scary not to own. Even though he's at such a cheap price, his ceiling is clearly huge. It wouldn't
Yeah,
shock me in the slightest if he scores 100 this season in really quick time, breaks the
yeah,
game open, and possibly breaks Supercoach with that sort of thing because he's a standout player. And
yeah,
I called it on our socials, the Supercoach Gun socials during that game that he will be part of the Australian T20 squad in some capacity, whether it be a travelling reserve or just in the playing squad as a whole. I think he's if he keeps going on with like this, how can the selectors not pick him as a bit of depth and exposure?
yeah.
We'll move on to the final game of the round because outside of those two, it was a pretty quietish game. That game, I mean, last night was a fantastic game. Sixers winning by 1 run. Jamie Overton again, he scored 126 last night, but he really did botch that chase. I mean, he was 14 off 20 at one point. Yeah, I mean, look, the Sixers, they just keep finding ways to win, even when they're not playing all that well, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and they always have. That's what's made Sixers and Perth two of the most better sides in the BBL. They both find ways to win. Perth with their all-out bowling attack, and Sixers with their they just have a very consistent team.
Yeah, that's right. And I just can't help but think that, you know, every time I see the Sixers collapse, Jordan Silk, Moses Enriquez, they
Yeah,
always salvage the innings. It's just,
yeah,
uh, they're very blessed to have a player like Jordan Silk in that team. And Moses, his leadership really helped them
yeah,
last night. Uh, Josh Philippi. Now, he only scored 45, but he looked really, really on in the power play there. He's only managed to get to, I mean, I say only, he's edged his way up to 125,000. He's not going to be a popular buy because he hasn't got any doubles coming up, but you'd be hoping he has a big game against the Melbourne Stars this week at the SCG.
yeah. Well, I mean, he's highly owned, and I didn't start with Philippe. I mean, I didn't start with any Sixers, just based on the way the draws are and building forward. I just couldn't find room for Sixers. But geez, he's hard to watch when you don't own.
Yeah, he is. He just, as you mentioned, yeah, he's one of those guys that just goes for it.
Yeah,
They can be very volatile, as we've covered, but when they come off, it's a thing of beauty. Um,
yeah,
but not who. Speaking of players who didn't come off, David Payne. Now he was a pretty popular trade in amongst the top 5-10% this round.
Yeah,
Tell me, like he ended up with a solid total of 86 in the double, but it
yeah.
was more the way he looked when he was bowling. It wasn't really that good. Tell me, do you think you'll hold him or just cash
No,
out?
I'm selling him this round. I've literally sold him this round. I look. I didn't like what I saw from him. He looked like he hasn't played for a while, which is what's happened. He hasn't played for a while. He looked rusty. He was all over the shop. It just didn't look like the pain that we saw last year, to be fair.
No, and I'm hoping that during this break that the strikers have, that he just keeps practicing in the nets, and he can come back in later on in the tournament when the strikers are pretty relevant again,
Yeah,
and be a pretty handy pickup for us. So that'll do us for the round recap. I'll start out with we'll go through some break evens, the top 5 highest, the top 5 lowest.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I'm going to exclude the ones that are on the buy this week, just because what's the point?
yeah,
And the ones that aren't playing. So Chris Jordan, of all the playing players, he has the lowest break even of -26. I don't think I don't know about you, but I don't think he's really worth a worthwhile selection. But just because no double in sight, and there's 2 doubles this round, you're better off looking towards those, aren't you?
yeah. Absolutely. I'm not looking at Hobart at all. And Jordan still wouldn't be in my. I mean, I like top three batsmen, strike bowlers. I just don't see Jordan in my scope at all at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Second one here is Nikhil Chowdhury. If you're desperate for a cheapie, like he's there, he's 54,000. But as for the reason we just said, probably not
Yeah.
worthwhile.
And there's so much value in Renegades and Stars this week, points per dollar, that, if you really did need to trade down, there are options that are still in doubles. So, I mean, own Chandra, hold him. I wouldn't be buying him.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Jack Edwards. Now this one I did want to speak about because he did end up batting at 6 and bowling 4 overs. Now he didn't actually bowl all that well. He got one for 48 and only scored 12 runs. But in that sort of role, it's very hard not to do well in Supercoach. He's 90k. Do you think that there's a chance you'd consider him, or is he going to fall into that same bucket as Chowdhury and Jordan for you?
Well, the problem with him is, so with Abbott out to start with, that he made his role look better. But the fact that Curran's out and out for 4 weeks does make Edwards look a little bit more enticing. But the problem is their double isn't up until when their double is. I can't even remember the Sixers.
Well, I'll have a look here.
They don't have
Round.
one, another
They
one.
don't have another one. There
That's
you go.
right. Yeah, that's right. They don't have another one. So yeah, look, I mean, I like Edwards. I always have. I mean, his position in the team is good for Supercoach, but I just don't know how consistent that's going to be. I mean, Abbott comes back in. Curran comes back in after 4. The next 4, we're going to be building Renegades, Thunder. We've sort of got a plan going forward, and I don't think Sixers and Hobart fit either.
No, I think you're right. And if you had some to
Yeah.
start, then just hold them. But you don't need to You don't need to buy any of them. I don't think.
No.
So I won't bother with Moses then because we've pretty much covered that already. Zach Crawley, we've covered. Tanvir Sanger. Now he's a very interesting one because obviously he's
Yeah.
got the double coming up after this. He's 119,000 with another negative break even. Do you think you should go now, or are you willing to pay up, say 130 for him in round 4?
No, absolutely go now. I mean, I went last round. I got him last round. I had him in my starting side and then swapped him out for O'Connor. But I wished I had have kept Sanger. But I'd definitely be jumping on now. He's somebody you're going to want for the double, which is the week after this. So, and it's perfect to play off the bench. Like last week and this week, they played the first game, Thunder. So Sanger, Hales, Bancroft, Gilks, all them sort of players. Probably not Gilks. They're the kind of players that you want in your side.
Yeah, because you
To
can take
lose.
advantage of that loop, as you say.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're not too expensive, particularly Sanger, Hales, Ollie Davis. They're not all that expensive, and where you can get full advantage of them. Fraser McGurk, he's the first one of the doubles. He's got the lowest break even of any double player, -2. We've spoken about him at length. I think absolute must for your team this week. And finally, we'll talk about some of the higher break evens because they're going to be the ones that are, a bit more tilted towards doubles.
Yeah.
Will Sutherland. Now, he's got 146 break even, again, over 2 games. But I can see him reaching that for sure. I don't know about you.
Yeah, Sutherland started in my team from round one, and he'll stay in there to the end. I
Yeah.
see no reason where he leaves my side. I mean, his role is, even though he didn't get the points this round, he's going to bowl 4 overs and bat most games. Like, he's a player you just keep to the end. Personally, I will not be letting him go, no matter what his break even is.
Yeah. And he just looks like a phenomenal cricketer now. Like, the
Yeah,
Renegades invested in him, Fraser McGurk and Mackenzie Harvey around 3 or 4 years ago, and they're finally starting to reap rewards from McGurk and Sutherland. And it's what was hyped up all these years ago about these guys. Exciting batters, exciting all rounders, future leaders of their state, and future players for their country potentially. Jai Richardson, he's second. He got the second highest break even, and he's only playing 1 game, 145 break even. But as we mentioned before, like, it's a points play now, isn't it? We're not
yeah, that's right.
looking at cash.
Yeah, if you
Um,
need to generate cash, I mean, Richo's probably your bloke you could use to do that, because, I mean, a lot of people are probably looking, but do I sell him? Do I sell them short? If you set your side right up, you should be able to hold both, which I'm doing. But I can understand people selling Richo because it's a lot of money to hold on your bench for the next 2 buys. But
yeah,
I'm definitely holding him myself for this particular game. I like
yeah,
his
and I've
matchup.
likewise. I've got him, and I'll be holding him too. And if I think there's an opportunity to sell him after this week, then I probably will.
Yeah,
But if he goes close to that break even, I don't think there is an opportunity.
yeah,
Um, Bo Webster is number 3. Now, he's an interesting one because I think he will bat 3. I just don't think he'll bowl all that much. Would you pick Webster for his batting alone, or is
no,
that
I
break even
wouldn't.
too
Not at
high?
the price he is. Over 150 only bad, I wouldn't touch. But I actually love Webster, and if I knew for a fact he'd be betting, he wouldn't only be in my side, he'd be a genuine possible captain option. I mean, we got Maxi there and Sutherland, but I really like Webster when he's bowling. I just don't think he will. But there's a chance when Murr goes out that his role could improve. So for the next buy, he could be someone to look at. For the
He
next
could be,
double, sorry. Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's an interesting one, isn't he? Because, like, in a really
yeah,
good role, he will perform. But if there's no
yeah,
role for him, he's not going to get any points whatsoever. Um,
yeah.
Number 4 we've got here is Quinton de Kock. Now, you mentioned before you're not touching a bat that's over 150. Well, Quinton de Kock slots in conveniently at 148,000, so this is going to be a tough one. What do you think? Would you bring him in?
I am bringing him in, but I'm wrestling with this between him, Clark, and Harper. Harper is a good play going forward. I really like Clark, but Quinton de Nock, we both know what he can do, and if he does do what he can do in even one of those 2 games, it'll be enough to justify the price point of 148.
Yeah, and I think people will look away from Quinton de Kock just because he's had a slow start to the tournament. Like, he's only in
Yeah,
20% of the teams, so
yeah,
he's not as highly owned as what could be. I won't
yeah,
say he should be because he hasn't actually had that good of a start to the tournament, but he's a very damaging player, and you know if he really does kick on in one of these innings, he could skyrocket you up the rankings, even at the 20%
absolutely.
ownership.
He's the
Now,
second most bought
yeah,
player this round as well.
that's yeah. So it makes sense as well. Like, it's not the 180
Yeah,
starting price, so
yeah, yeah.
Or we'll do one more player, Sam Harper. Now, a few people owned him from round 1 because they knew they have a keeper on the buy round 2. So that I get. Then he comes out and scores 5 in 2 games. Can't hit it off the square. In fact, I did look at this during the week. Got a great statistic for you. In Sam Harper at the Melbourne Stars, in his whole career, averages 7.7 points a game. He's never been good at the Stars ever.
Right.
So, uh, Now, in saying that, he did bat at 7 as a wicketkeeper in way back, and he's had a pretty
Yeah.
shocking start here. Do you think, even with 130 break even, um, if you were an owner, would you hold him and just let the cash bleed and hope that he goes as close to that break even as he can, or are you just going to cut your losses and move on?
Oh, if I own Harper, I would definitely not be letting him go. He's got a double this week, and then 2 weeks rounds later, he's got another double. So I would not be letting go of any of my star players. And but there are some pros and cons to Harper. So one of my fears is that Stoinis, possibly even Cardi, could move up the order and push him back down. They've got to do something, and I just see a scenario where Stoinis opens. But yeah, not sell. I mean, I'm actually looking at bringing him in. He's actually just because I want to build forward. And he's a perfect player to play from the Pine.
Yeah, fair enough. Does that big break even scare you at all, though?
Well, that's what scares me off bringing him in. But it wouldn't scare me off owning and selling. As I said, there's only 9 rounds, and I wouldn't be too freaked out about cash with only 9 rounds. I mean, it's nice if you can make it where you need it, but don't give up points for dollars. I think that Harper's, like I said, he's got a double now, and then in 2 more rounds, he's got another double. So that, if you're building forward, you should always be holding on to those that have got those coming up. And Stars is one of them.
Yeah, that's right. We'll go into some questions from the SuperCoach Hub community. First one here is from, hang on, let me get it here. Twitch at Flinch, sorry. Must have Stars and Renegades. What's the minimum of amount of players from each team that you would want? Glen,
Well,
what do you think?
must-have for me would be Maxi. I think Maxi's an absolute must-have, and those that sold him are insane last week. JFM, I think, would be one that I'd say was as well. Sutherland, and you may even argue Kane Richardson. There's an interesting one coming, which is Steckity, which we may talk about going forward.
Yeah, personally, I'm quite interested in Steckity myself because currently, well, I'll go into it later. I've traded in Harris Ralph just because he's the
Yeah,
lead of that attack, but
yeah,
he's not here round 5. If I
yeah,
see Steckity named in his
yeah,
game 1, 3:30 this afternoon, I'll pick him over Ralph because I know he will be here in round
yeah.
5, and I'm thinking now availability is the best ability. It's a pretty cliche saying, but I think it rings true in this situation at the very least. For me, in the must-have category, I've got Maxi, I've got JFM, I've got Will Sutherland.
Yeah.
I think one of Ralph or Steckity will be quite important to own. If you really want to go aggressive and say, you know what, I'm happy to burn through some trades and have a crack at Harris Ralph,
Yeah.
then I think he probably does outscore Mark Steckity this round. It's just that he's going to score 0 in round 5. That's the reason I'm a bit turned off from him.
I
They are
started
my
Murr.
sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying I started Murr from round 1, so I'm hoping that pays off. He looked really good in the last game he played. There was a few ops that missed opportunities, but and on numbers, 7 or 8, I think is a comfortable number. So I'll have 8. 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 8. I'll have 8 for this round.
Yeah. So I'll go a bit controversial. I'm thinking it's 6. I think it because the Stars haven't been very good at all, and the
Yeah,
Renegades are very dependent on a few players. I
yeah,
reckon too many doubles could you could end up with a couple of lowish scores from players on the double. Now, you know, is it the safer play to go with more doubles? Yes, absolutely. And is my hot take fueled with a bit of jealousy that people have got 8 or 9? Absolutely. But I'm willing to back in that 6 is a reasonable enough number, provided you've got a quality 6. I
yeah.
think
If you
fit.
land on the right one,
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you, Nathan. I think that sometimes we can go overboard and have too many, and if you're actually there is a fair trade-off in building forward. So buying a couple of Thunder and going forward and having the 6. So I don't hate that. And I agree with you on the Stars. I don't think there's a lot to like in the Stars. Like between Maxi and Steckity, I go past them two, and there's nothing that really jumps out at me and says I must have them. there's no one there that makes me afraid to not own. I own Murr, and I think he's someone that could be an interesting pod, but I wouldn't be jumping on him now because it's not really building forward.
Yeah, well, whilst we're on the topic of pods, we'll answer this next question. It comes from Slog the Maiden, actually, who I don't see why he's asking questions. He's all over it. But
Yeah,
who
yeah.
do we rate as the best pods from the Stars and the Gates?
I think
Now,
Dawson.
Dawson, yeah, I would have loved Dawson, except I think he only plays one game in this double because he gets replaced
Yeah,
by Zim. I like your Mir shout. I think he's a really good
yeah,
player. And
yeah,
I think, what's his ownership? It's got to be pretty low. Let's see if I can get it here. Yeah, 1.4%. Like
yeah,
that's basically no one, right? That's a
yeah,
pretty fair shout. Um, right now, Mark Secchi is actually at 1.3%. I think if he's
yeah.
named, that number goes up. I don't know about you. Do you have any pods?
Yeah, well, I have Murr
Yeah,
already, and Stecky's the other one that I'm jumping on this round if he's named. There's a real risk about his job security playing both games, but I'm willing to risk it based on his pedigree. And yeah, I started Murr from the beginning. I actually like Murr. I think he's a really good player. He just hasn't had the reward to show how good he actually is. And I'm hoping that reward pays off for this double because I don't think many people are going to jump on him based on the fact he's not in the next double.
yeah, and I think that's what you could look at with not only me but you could look at that perspective with Harris Ralph as well. Is that you
Yeah,
know people are going to be scared away. Um,
and
yeah,
And from the Renegades, I think Majib and Tom Rogers are two that aren't being jumped on as much because everybody's jumping on players like Clark, Quinton Denock, JFM. I've got Maddo in my side. I'm kind of regretting that. Like Maddo and Murr, I started from the beginning off the bench just to be my little potties. Maddo did bowl one last night, so I'm hoping that he bowls a couple through that double and is another one that could be potty. But I reckon Rogers and Majib could be real nice little pods.
yeah. Nick Madison's an interesting one because he always finds a way to have this sort of random great bowling performance. I think in every year that he's played a lot of Big Bash cricket, he's always come out of the season with at least one three for. So he has
Yeah,
I know he's a weird knack of taking wickets at the weirdest of times. Um, so I don't mind the shout, and he's pretty cheap as well, like 66k, batting in the top four, bowling a little bit. There's been worse ideas. You're relying on a very volatile player. You know,
yeah, yeah.
um, one of my pods that I didn't mention before. I mean, we mentioned Tom Rogers, but I don't mind the look of Joel Paris. I mean, I get he
Yeah,
didn't have
right.
a very good first game, and so that probably brings his job security into question with Mark Steckety returning. But I do think that he's got a pretty happy knack of taking wickets at the top.
Yep.
And I'm not going to, it's a bit brutal, but the Thunder's top order outside of Bancroft hasn't been, in tip top shape to start the season. Hales and Jilks have been walking wickets so far. So um, I wouldn't be surprised if Paris gets one or two early this afternoon.
When I saw Paris first come into the comp playing for Perth, I said, I like this kid. He was quick. He had swing. He had everything. But since his injury, I don't see the same Paris. But I don't hate that shout. 94K, it's not a bad shout. I just wonder, as you said, with job security, with Steckety coming back in. And on pods, I mean, if you wanted one just for this round, Ralph was a good shout, what you said earlier as well. I think Ralph, could have a nice game against Thunder specifically.
Yeah, I agree. So
Yeah.
we'll get into our trades now. Glenn, what are you thinking of doing this round? Who are your ins and outs?
Yeah, so I've sold Paris. Oh, sorry, not Paris. Now you got me confused. I've sold Payne. I've sold Basley, and I sold what's his name, Billings. And so far, I've bought in Steckety, James Fraser McGurk, and Quinton Denock. That's my free trades at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty decent set of three, isn't it? Um,
Yeah,
yeah, for me, I've taken out Spencer Johnson, who I foolishly held. He dropped 25k, which I found absurd. I've sold. Who else did I sell? I didn't. David Payne. I've sold David
Yeah,
Payne. I think, yeah, I had a go. It didn't really pan out, and I've sold Michael Nisa as well.
yeah,
I only held Michael Nisa because Tom Curran got ruled out, and
yeah.
well, yeah, I guess he didn't really perform in the end. He only bowled 2 overs, Michael Nisa, so don't know if I'll be getting him back, but I have sold him. And I brought in um, Quinton de Kock, Tom Rogers, and yeah, Mark Steckety as well. So I've gone
Nice.
very much a bit on the left field side this round. Not as a few pods here and there, but yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with how the team's panned out. Who do you? We'll answer one final question from the hub, which I did miss. Is round three? This is from Brad Parker, super fan. Okay, is round three the best time to boost due to both the Stars and the Renegades having doubles, and the Strikers and the Heat having the bye?
I would answer that as being that's team specific. It would depend on how your team looks. I think it's not a bad time to boost the Thunder game. A lot of people have built for Stars and Renegades. So, sorry, you're talking about this round. Sorry, boosting.
Yeah,
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 round three. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think next round four, might be a good one for boosting. But if you're buying going forward, like say if you don't have a Hales or a Bancroft or a Sanger, then I would be looking at a boost for that. Bringing in a Thunder player to put on your bench. I don't know if I'd be getting an extra Stars or Renegade. You should already have at least 4 in your side if you're built right.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't reckon this round's the one to boost. I think I did notice in our preseason planning that after the Scorchers have their 2 buys back to back,
Yeah,
they go straight into a double.
yeah, that's
So
right.
so that's a perfect round to boost because you want to go
Yeah,
from 2 to
yeah.
6 potentially, 2 Scorchers to 6. That's certainly a way of looking at it. Um, and I think the other question he has here is Quinton de Kock a must have for next round?
No,
Um, no, but he's a
no.
pretty handy player to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I wouldn't put him as a must-have. Anybody at that price point, I don't look as a must-have. You know, I look at points per dollar. You know, I think JFM would be more on a must-have, to my opinion, or way of looking at SuperCoach. But I mean, I must-have some. I think it gets used too often. A must-have for me was Darcy Short round one
yeah,
because of his
agreed.
price point. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Well, I reckon we'll leave it there.
yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I should mention that I think there's a bit of a break now between Supercoach Hub podcasts. I think we're a little bit away, probably just after this Christmas period. I think we start back up again on the 30th. So
Right.
there'll be a round 4 review in the evening, Saturday evening, that'll be recorded. And then, well, I'm back on here with the back-to-back champ Andrew Langley on the
Yeah.
31st in the morning. So a
Nice.
fair few coming through late, very late on in December. Glenn, what's going on in the Supercoach Tragics?
So as you know, we run the Shane Warne Cup, so I'll be keeping that update. We were going to do a pod today, but we've agreed that we'll just post this one on our page for the day. The information's done. I will be doing a pod after round 3 on our Tragics page, so keep your eye out for that. And yeah, and as you know, Broad runs all the cash comps, so he's got all the cash comps going. So if you're in the cash comps, keep your eye on Broad from Tragics. He runs all our cashies.
Beauty. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And
My pleasure,
yeah,
mate.
no worries. And yeah, we'll be back on the 30th for a round preview. All right. Thanks for listening.
Cheers, guys. Merry Christmas.